Welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Maya Weinreb, CEO and founder of Solvency Now Bookkeeping and Maya Management, LLC. Let's talk money.
We touched on a subject in the last episode, and I think it's very appropriate that we go back to that.
Yeah.
And that was about women in business.
Yeah.
We got a couple requests. People were saying that they wanted you to talk more about women in business.
Yeah.
One of the things that I remember you brought up earlier was about how easy or hard it was to be in corporate as a woman.
Yeah. So this is something like, obviously I have personal experience. I am a woman in business, but on top of that, I do bookkeeping for women in business and men, right? So, or my company does. So I'm kind of like the influencer kind of person, right? I do a lot of consulting and helping. And so some of the things are things that I have like had women tell me, and some of the things are things I've experienced myself, not all, both. So, because I started a bookkeeping firm, and even before that, I was in-house bookkeeping. I was a CFO for a marketing company, and people would ask me like, "Oh, isn't it hard to like be a woman in the corporate?" And I'd be like, because I never experienced that myself. And maybe because it's bookkeeping and accounting, and that's something that's traditionally women, right? For me, I never had a moment in a boardroom where I felt like people weren't listening to me because I'm the one that had the data. So they listened to me because I had the numbers, and I was like, well, it says blah, blah, blah. And they were like, great. But I'm also not in like strategic planning or something, right? So maybe it's different. I've always had people be really respectful and listen. I'm also loud and obnoxious. So I don't know that I would have noticed if they weren't trying to listen to me. I probably would have been like, I like you see it in movies too, where like women kind of shut down because men are saying something. And I don't even know that I would have noticed. I would have just been like, there's a person that didn't let me finish my communication. Excuse me, what I was actually saying is blah, blah, blah. But that's just like my personality and partially why I'm an entrepreneur, right? But I think especially for in the bookkeeping industry, it's majority women. And I think it's such a good industry to be in because men love working with women, like especially, on things that are kind of like personal like this, like they feel like they're in good hands, like because women have that EQ, they care, they're there to support you for the most part, right? And then women love working with women as their bookkeeper because they feel more comfortable. They're not being talked down to. They're not, they don't feel like they're being judged. So for me, it's been like a really, really good experience. I can't speak for everyone. And again, like I said, I'm like loud and obnoxious and grew up in a Jewish family where like my Big Fat Greek Wedding, the movie, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like to be heard, you had to be louder than everybody else. So like it was like that movie. So for me, that's normal. Like if I felt that I wasn't being listened to, I would just probably get louder and more annoying until someone listened to me. But that's,
I think there's like a commonality there, right? It's like Jewish people, Greeks, Italians,
exactly.
They're all just they have that same personality.
Yeah.
Right?
And some of the Hispanic cultures too, but not all. Like I saw like Colombians. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like my family at home. Yeah. It's funny because in the US, I only have my mom, my dad, and my sister. So it was different. But whenever I go back home to Israel, I have like 40 family members. So it'd be like, ah, and if we're all in the same room, it's insane. And then a lot of times, like when you do, I'm going off topic, but when you do these like religious gatherings or whatever, like weddings, memorials, whatever, you're not the only family there. So you've got your 40 loud and they sing and they bang on the tables and it's so loud. And then the other families, like 3 tables away, are doing the same thing. So it's loud.
Well, I don't think that's really off topic because when you think about it, when you have that kind of experience growing up and then you go into the corporate world or even just working in an office, you're kind of prepared to have controversy, to have, differing opinions.
Yeah, in a certain way. What I wasn't prepared for in offices is when they would tell me I was too loud or if I was talking too much. Like if someone's sitting next to you, it's polite to talk to them. And it's true, it's easy to get distracted. But like there was a time at an office I worked at, they were like, we're gonna make a new policy. The employees aren't gonna talk to each other. And I was like, what? And it was like, don't say good morning. And I was like, what? That blew my mind.
Well, what about bookkeeping? So, like, as a bookkeeper, specifically in that field, what was that like?
I think that being the bookkeeper, like just by itself, demands respect because you know the numbers and you're not making it up. You're not making, oh, the fourth quarter projection or blah, 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 blah. You're actually like, here's how much money you made, here's how much money you spent. The bad thing about it is when they ask you a question and you answer, well, it depends. And then everybody laughs. But it's true. Like some things do depend. Like, do you want to know it cash or accrual? Do you want to know the answer based on this or this?
Let's go into that right now because I think that's really important. Talk about the difference between cash and accrual.
Cash and accrual, yes. It's a cruel, cruel world. Just kidding. That's it. That's an accounting joke. Cash is how most companies in the US do their bookkeeping. And what it means is it's very logical. Money that comes in, you count it as income. Money that goes out, you count it as an expense or, a distribution money out. And that's how most small businesses in the US operate. But there are larger businesses and certain types of industries, like sometimes e-commerce or different industries will do accrual. And it comes from the word accrue, right? Which means like gather together. And the way that they do taxes or bookkeeping is they count income as all invoiced money. So if you send someone a bill or an invoice, it counts as income right then, even though that it's a lie because the money's not in the bank. But that's how they do the taxes. So fine, that's one way of doing it. And it counts as an expense or an expenditure money going out as soon as you receive a bill. So it makes sense for certain planning purposes, right? Like if you receive a bill, regardless of when you pay it, you will know whether or not you have enough money based on how much you've invoiced, right? And you can see what expenses and income accrues or comes from that certain time period. So for instance, if someone worked during this week, then the payroll accrued that week, even though you're not going to pay the payroll until next week. It's related to this time period. There is value in it for seeing what time period something is related to for planning purposes as far as what is
like projection.
Yeah, invoiced out and what's invoiced in. Like I do see value to it, but for most small businesses, it's honestly just like a lot of paperwork and a pain in the ass. And you can't use it for financial planning because you're basing it off money that's not actually in. So let's say you send someone an invoice and then they never pay you. Okay, so in accrual-based accounting, if someone doesn't pay you, then you write it off as, lost income and you don't have to pay taxes on it. Or if you already, you know what I mean? So there's things to do, but you can't plan. You can't do a budget or a financial plan based on money that's not in the bank account. So I personally don't really like it in a majority of cases, but I can see the value in using it and knowing what the numbers are for certain planning purposes, but not for financial planning as far as like, we've talked about the financial plan, like what came in that week, what are you going to pay? So you can't do that on accrual. You have to do that on cash.
It seems like if you had investors and things like that, you'd want to go more in that direction because then you can, like you were talking about projecting.
Yeah, exactly. And things that have investors often do use accrual. They want to know what are we, what do we, because also there's things like you can sell your accounts receivable, right? So if you've invoiced out $1 million, whether you received it or not, you could now sell it to someone for $1 million minus fees.
It's like if you have contracts, right? Agreements, monthly agreements or retainers, and you're still collecting on that.
Right.
Right. This is kind of interesting because we're talking about different ways of looking at things. Well, the next topic on my list is how women build businesses versus how men build businesses. Let's talk about that.
I've had a lot of conversations about that recently. It's such an interesting topic because I'm in a unique position to really see a lot of businesses. Like just right now, we have almost 150 companies we're doing bookkeeping for, and that's current open businesses. Unfortunately, in the US, I think the average amount of time a business lasts is like 5 years, a small business. So I started my company 6 years ago. I do not have all of the companies that I've ever had. not all of them are even open anymore, like I said. So it's sad, but I've seen them in business. I've seen investor businesses with, tech businesses. I've seen, the laundry mat businesses. I've seen all kinds of businesses come and go, and male owned and women owned. And I do see the difference. And I have a lot of friends that own businesses. I feel like men have this ability.
Oh, should I brace myself? Or?
No, that's not that bad. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's good in certain ways, right? It has pros and cons. Like, men have this ability to be like really like one track mind. And they're like, okay, profit. This is not profitable, out. And they just take emotion out of it.
Yeah. It's true.
Right.
It's true.
And I admire that. Like, to a certain degree, I'm like, I wish I could be tough like that. And then
we're more cold-blooded.
A little bit, but you're also like, we also know why, right? Like, you also only have one browser window open at a time. And we're the logistics people. We have 25 browser windows open at the same time.
That's really funny because I have that, I work with my wife.
Yeah, you told me.
And she has like 30 browser windows, and it drives me crazy.
Exactly.
I can't have more than 3 maybe, and then I feel like I'm going crazy.
Right, exactly. So you guys, like, with your one track, like, it's great. You don't get distracted. You are not thinking about your wife while you're working. Your wife is thinking about your kids, the laundry, work, the next income source, what she's going to make for dinner. Like, I can guarantee we could go and ask her. Like, she's thinking about all of that. And most likely you're just like, the person in front of me, the podcast we're working on. And you're not even thinking about the next one until you're done with the one you're on, right? Yeah, no, she's got all the browser windows. So as a woman in business, you're like, okay, so profit isn't good. What should I do? Maybe I need to fire someone because either they're not doing a good job or, the company can't afford it. But they're such a nice person and they're trying so hard. And I know that their daughter just had surgery and they have to pay for it. And if I fire them, what are they going to, that's not always best for your business, for the bottom line. Is it best for like your soul? Maybe, are men wrong for like being so one track mind? Not necessarily. That's what I'm saying. It's like pros and cons, right? You have to have balance, but like, I don't think they're necessarily wrong. And I think that in general, there are way more men-owned businesses, which means there are way more like men-owned successful businesses than there are women-owned businesses and women-owned successful businesses. And I feel like because of that, it almost makes it harder to be a woman in business because you're thinking about everything. You're not just thinking about profit and bottom line, which to a certain degree, we need to do more. And to a certain degree, men need to do a little less. They need to be a little more, heartful instead of heartless. I don't know if heartful is really a word, but I just made it up if it's not. They need to do it more. But it's like I don't know that one is right or one is wrong.
You mentioned these words, but, to me, it's fascinating because I know that these are topics and terms that people, they hear and they use them. I don't really think they understand what they mean. So like when you say bottom line, what does that mean?
Your bottom line would be your profit, right? It would be your solvency. Are you making more money than you're spending? That's what solvency means. To be solvent, you are making more money than you are spending. So you're in the black, right? There's a lot of like synonyms for this. You have to be in the black. So if you're, oh my gosh, here's a perfect example. I saw this meme the other day that said lower class or whatever, it's like broke people, the husband and the wife are working, middle class, the wife stays home and takes care of the kids, upper class, the wife stays home and does, whatever. And then like really rich, the wife owns her own business and loses you $10,000 a month. Right? Have you seen that one going around? I have to find it. And I was like, that's hilarious because that's like, it's rude. It's rude, right? The husband is just like, sure, honey, you're bored. You can open a clothing store or something. And just, it's not going to hurt too much if you lose us $10,000 a month.
Well, I've seen it the other way around too. I've seen very rich women whose husbands have their own little businesses and the businesses are just not doing well.
Yeah. So, okay. So, both ways it's stupid because it's not paying attention to the bottom line. You cannot succeed in business if you are not profitable. That's the bottom line, right? You have to be profitable. If you are making, and that's including everything, that's including paying your taxes, paying yourself, everything, right? If you're making less money than you're spending, like the US government eventually is going in the direction of bankruptcy, right? Like you can't, maybe you could do a month of that. Maybe you have savings. Maybe you can borrow, right? And you can do it for a little while, but eventually you're going to go out of business. And that's a big reason why most companies fail because, or I'm not saying that most companies fail, but of the companies that
most
fail,
companies do fail.
yeah,
I think it's something
small businesses.
I think it's something like what was in the 70s, right? 70%, over 70%.
I think it depends how long you take it. I think if you go all the way to like in 10 years, like 90% of companies will fail or some ridiculous number. It's very sad. But one of the things is they don't understand how to be profitable. Like it is not taught.
Look, here are the stats.
Tell us.
So it says here, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the percentage of businesses that fail over time. So in the first year, 20%, almost 21%.
Mm-hmm. They still have savings.
Yeah. 3 years, 40%.
Yep. They got a line of credit.
5 years, 49.9%.
Half of them are gone.
10 years, 65.8%. 15 years, 73.3%. 20 years, 80%.
So in 20 years, they almost all fail. Now, obviously, you have to look at what does fail mean. We talked about that because for women-owned businesses, I think it's different than male-owned businesses. A woman who closes her business down to go have more time for her family does not mean she failed because success can mean different things for different people. For men, generally, obviously not always, right? I don't want to say that there's no like stay-at-home dads because there are. But in general, it's the woman who goes and takes care of the kids and does all that. So if you want to have it all, you want to have kids, have a business, all that, like at some point, sometimes you have to shift priorities. And if your company isn't like successful enough to sell, or if it's like a single member kind of like you do something for Etsy or whatever, just because you shut down your business does not mean you failed necessarily. You know, and I really want women to know that.
I think that's one of the amazing things about America is it's so easy to open a company, to close a company, you know, to move. Because realistically, if you look at it, most people start businesses and they close them and they're trying different things, right?
Yeah.
So that also is taken into account in that statistic.
It's true.
Maybe or a lot of times in the US, people open an LLC or, you know, some kind of corporation for a short period of time. Like I know in the film industry, like I studied film, right? That's what I went to college for. And one of the things you do is every time you do a movie, you'll start an LLC for the movie.
Right. So are they considering that all in their statistics?
And if the movie's successful, then the LLC stays open and you do merchandising and promotion for years on end. But you might close that business down if it flops. Let's say you don't get all your investors or for whatever reason the movie doesn't make it, then you close the business.
And there's a lot of industries like right now, I think there's been a shift away from like tech industries into more physical industries. Cody Sanchez talks about this all the time. It's like, go find one that's not, you know, that successful or the boomer is retiring, take it over, get them out of fax, make them a website, do a little bit of, you know, get rid of the fax machine and get rid of the, you know, whatever. And make money and then sell it. So that doesn't mean you failed either. If you sold it, there's serial entrepreneurs who will buy things and flip them.
That's so true.
So
yeah, people think you can only flip houses or land, you know, real estate.
No, people flip businesses.
You can flip businesses. There's so many things you can flip.
And then there's like, then there's entrepreneurs who do serial like tech and, you know, companies or whatever, where they have big investors. And investors know that a majority of them are going to fail. So they invest in a bunch of them, knowing that one of them, if they're smart, is going to be their cash cow. And the other ones are all going to fail. But what do those investors do? They just go, or sorry, the entrepreneurs, they just go start another one based on what they learned. And even though, so it's one of those things, like there is no like losing, there's no failing. You win or you learn. You take what you learn and you go build something else with it. Like I could say that I failed a couple of times in business before I started this company, but I never even thought, I just thought I never got it off the ground. And even if that company no longer exists, you learned so much out of that. And sometimes it's emotional. So, okay, like wipe yourself off,
Business, it really gives you that roller coaster of emotions, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I saw one the other day that was like,
especially the payroll,
oh my
the
God.
taxes,
The things you don't know. You're like, what? I owe this money for taxes? No one told me. Yeah, you're right. No one told you, but you do.
Right.
And it sucks. And you're like, but you have the highest highs and the lowest lows. Like, man, have I even had like maybe relationships is like the other things where you have that much emotions. But like, you're like, wow, I just closed this big contract. I'm like so excited. And then like someone quits and you're like, oh, now I have to find a new person. And until then, I have to stay up all night and do that myself because I can't not do it because it's my baby and I don't have the option of just leaving at 5 p.m.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge. And it's harder for women.
So let's talk about that.
It's harder for women because women, okay, I don't have kids. So some of what I'm saying is probably just like based on my observations. But imagine if you were trying to like stay up all night to get all your work done and you had to get the kids to school in the morning. So it's like, how can they do what I'm doing, but also have kids? And the husband also works usually, It's not like the husband's the stay-at-home dad. And it's like, do they have like a full-time nanny? Not usually. They just figure out how to do it all. And I'm so impressed. I just imagine that they must be more organized than me, that the more you have to do, the more organized that you get.
It's just like business. As your business grows, and in fact, in order to make your business grow, you have to implement systems, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with a family.
The
more kids you have, like, I have a lot of friends growing up, they were like 4 or 5 kids in the family, and the mom would just had systems. It was like, okay, on Saturdays, I make all the food up till Wednesday. And then on Wednesday nights, it's like cooking all the way till Saturday. They have everything color coded in bins.
I know, but I have systems too. And yet someone quits and I am up all night for a month to get that work done.
It's true.
So then what do you do?
Yeah. You cope. You cope.
And here's the thing, like traditionally, I don't know about the whole world, but in the US, traditionally, if you are a man in business, you're like just working. And the mom is, even if she works a full-time job, she's taking care of everything else. And men are like, oh, I'm working so hard. And it's like, yeah, bro, you're working on one thing. You're doing one thing. You're going to work every day. Your wife has a full-time job. She's taking care of 3 kids. She's doing the groceries. She's making sure you're fed, that the bills are paid. Good job on working on your one thing.
So let me ask you, because this is another thing that I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your opinion on this.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep.
I
feel like men can operate on 3-4 hours of sleep.
I think women need more sleep.
Will die if they're working on 3-4 hours. They're like, it's unbearable.
I think that is true. Of course, not for everyone. There's people who are the exception to the rule.
So I bring that up because that's another challenge.
Yeah,
especially if you have kids, because you're not sleeping.
And especially if they're little and they're still like, breastfeeding or waking up throughout the night. I honestly have so much respect because I know how hard it is to be just a woman in business, just with the other things, like as far as just like commanding the same amount of money as a man, running the business how I think it should be run with the emotional and with the EQ and with the empathy and caring about all the people and not always only looking at bottom line and how much I have to do, whatever. And I don't have kids, and maybe someday I will and I'll, figure it all out. But like, I feel like I'm pretty organized and yet I have no idea how I don't know. I guess the ones that's like, okay, they have an Etsy business, like they're making, $60,000 a year. Like, that's cool. That's cute. I'm glad they have, but like the ones that are making millions or tens of millions. And I'm like, how do they do that? And obviously, they're not doing it all themselves. They have systems, they have employees, they have teams. Side story, when I first started my business, I had this idea that if I hired people, I could work less, right? Like I'm kind of lazy in a certain way. Like I feel like I should write a book. We should write this down. I should write a book called like The Lazy Girl's Hack to Productivity. Like really, because I'm always like, what's the fastest, most efficient way to do that so that I can nowadays I'm like, so I can do more and make more money, right? But even like, okay, I don't really wear a lot of makeup usually, but I get my eyelashes done like once every 10 days, 2 weeks. And, I multitask. I take a nap while they're doing it. And it's great because I always need more sleep. And then I just don't wear makeup and I put on my Zoom and I got my lashes and I look like I have my makeup done. I get a blowout once or twice a week and the rest of the time my hair's up or whatever. And that's like, how we get efficient and how we get more done. But when I first started my business, I thought that if I hired people, I just wouldn't have to work because they could do it all. And then I realized that the more people you hire, the more work there is for you as a business owner and the manager, and that I was totally wrong. And I had to make a big shift from thinking that I could work less to realizing that as a business owner, as an executive, and as an entrepreneur, my job was to service my employees so they could do their jobs better. Obviously, also my clients, but like my employees are servicing my clients. Now, my job is to make my employees' jobs easier. And I was like, well, so much for not having any work to do. I work 80 to 100 hours a week, like probably most entrepreneurs do, right? I used to work like 35 to 40 hours a week and like feel like I was really busy. And the more people I hire, the more people I have to manage. So obviously I created systems. I try to put people under people. So I'm not managing everyone directly. But the more people you hire, the busier you are. So as a woman in business, that make those ones that have kids, want to do everything themselves and make like tens of millions of dollars, like girl, hats off.
Kudos to them.
Yeah. Teach me
It's
your ways.
incredible. Yeah.
I'm dating a guy that is also an entrepreneur. And I'm really at this point in my life where I want to be in my feminine energy. So he comes over and I'm like, baby, are you hungry? Do you need any? I'm also Jewish, right? But I've grown up. I think when I was younger, I would have been like, excuse me, I'm busy, I'm working. But now I'm like, no, like I admire him and I plan to have a future with him. And so I plan for him to break through the walls and be the head, and I plan to be the neck. I plan to direct him, to help him and support him. But I don't want all that stress for the rest of my life of breaking through the walls. Like I want to be like you do it. So now, even though my company is bigger than his and all that, he comes over and I'm like, do you need anything? Are you hungry? And I will stop and make him food because I'm investing and I will make sure that he's good and he's like, oh, like a few months ago, his car broke down. I was like, let me call AAA for you. I have 10 employees and 5 VAs. Like, I don't have time for that shit. But I do it and I don't even do it like weirdly. I'm at a place in my life, weirdly, where I'm not even resentful. I'm like, I want to do it. Would I be making more money if I didn't stop and make him dinner? Probably.
It's that nurturing quality.
I don't know. It's something. It's something. I think it's because I decided and I told him this, like, I'm investing in you because you're going to figure out, like, I'm going to get to the 10 million, on my own. I don't really need any help. I mean, I need, help, but like, I'm on my way. But like, you are going to figure out how to get to the 100 million and I will help. But I am not figuring out this 100 million on my own. It sounds stressful. I'm going to help you do it and I will guide you to it. And I will show you the goals that are possible and the life that is possible. And you're going to do it. We talked about this because we went to this 10X business summit a few weeks ago. And at first he was like, are you trying to say you don't want to work? And I was like, baby, look at me. Do I look like I'm someone who doesn't want to work? Like, do I look like I'm trying to sit around? Like, come on. And he was like, okay, I don't get it then. But I'm investing and I'm doing it. I'm committed, right? Like it's like commit first, figure it out later. I'm committing from the point of view that it will be that way. And that's why I have no resentment to stop and like make him dinner because I feel like that is me investing in him Now, if you're a woman listening and you're like, no, I like to just work, you should just work then. You should do whatever makes you happy. But for most women that I know that I've talked to, we're like the EQ, the empathy, the 1,000 browser windows open. That's your superpower. Do that and get the other people to just work. Get the men to work.
The multitasking aspect of it,
Yeah.
Because then and that's really interesting when you have that balance where you have people who are strong and going in one direction and you have people multitasking, thinking of the future. You can sort of play those two things together and get a lot more done.
It's literally the support. Like it's the beams that hold the rocket to be able to go in the rocket direction. And these beams are going to hold it up until it's like, and that's women. That concludes this episode of The Bottom Line. Like, subscribe, follow for more tips and more Maya-isms about money, women in business. And that's The Bottom Line.